I'm Michael, and welcome to Beyond the Screenplay's What We're Watching, our podcast where we watch a limited series week by week. Today we are talking about White Lotus, Season 3, Episodes 1, titled Same Spirits, New Forms, and Episode 2, Special Treatments. I'm joined by the Beyond the Screenplay team, Trisha Arand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello, hello.
And Alex Calleros.
Hi.
All right, so we're back with what we're watching. This was a little bit of an impromptu, let's just do it and see what happens. But season 3 of White Lotus is out. I've watched the previous 2 seasons, loved them. Brian has watched them, Alex has watched them, and Trisha, we are bullying into watching season 3.
A bit. You didn't have to twist my arm that hard. It was fun.
No. Yes, yeah. But yeah, so we're going to be releasing these episodes as soon as they're ready for our $5 tier patrons. And then Saturday mornings, we're going to release it to the public. So some people in the public get to come along with the ride just later than the cooler people.
That's not thematic at all.
Okay, so yeah, White Lotus is such a fun show to watch. The first 2 seasons were just like ripe with subtext and tension and satire and poking fun at all kinds of aspects of our culture and society. And this sort of format where there's a little bit of carryover from one season to another, but we're in a new setting, new characters, new cast, but kind of similar thematic elements has been cool to see across the first season and the second season, and now into the third season. I'm excited. Honestly, really, I just want to talk about this with Trisha and go on this ride with her, not having seen the first 2 seasons, and gather what she makes of it as we go along. But yeah, Brian and Alex, do you want to talk about your relationship with the first 2 seasons and the show and what you're kind of excited about as we are now 2 episodes into this season? Alex, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I came to this show in the second season. I think I don't know if I finished it first. I may have watched the whole thing first, actually. The entire second season, and I loved it. I loved the setting. I loved the cast. I loved all the gorgeous people. I loved Jennifer Coolidge. I loved the gays. Like, it was so fun and so good, and I just ate it up. And I went back and watched season 1, and I wasn't that into it. Like, it just didn't grab me in the same way. And by the end of the season, I got more into the characters and into their drama, but I feel like the way it all wrapped up, the reveal of the murder, just didn't have the same kind of operatic amazingness of season 2. So I was a little bit, I guess, spoiled with season 2 before going to season 1. But season 2 is one of my favorite TV experiences in recent years, and just it totally won me over. So this, it's a high bar for me. In Italy is hard to top, and just and just those characters, that cast, it was so good. But right from the start of this new season, like, just the way this show is shot is so freaking gorgeous. And I can understand why the show is so popular, because who doesn't want to go on a virtual vacation to the most gorgeous places in the world and the most amazing, luxurious resorts with a bunch of beautiful people that you can laugh at because they're revealing the worst
while
of all of us.
While poking fun at people that would want to do that.
Exactly. It's just like pure, pleasure in a TV show in a lot of ways. So anyway, that's my relationship for the first 2 seasons. Really obsessed with season 2. Season 1 I grew to like, but wasn't as in love with.
Yeah, I think I saw season 1 first, and I feel like that was a really cool standalone thing to come into. And then season 2 kind of, I think, found its stride and kind of like simplified and honed in on really what was working and maximized it. So I'm curious with a season 3 what they do, because like you said, it's a high bar to clear. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, also saw it from the beginning. Season 2 may have already happened when I started watching it, but I watched it from the beginning. And I very positive feelings overall. But my feeling with the first episode of the first season was interesting because it opens with this, oh, I hear someone. You came back from the White Lotus. I hear someone died up there or whatever, right? And then the episode happens. We meet all these characters, and I'm like, ooh, it's gonna be a murder mystery show. Like someone's gonna die in the first episode, and then it's gonna be a whole season of like who did it and like someone else da da da. So it's like Alexander Daddario walks into a room, and I'm just like, oh, she's in a room by herself. It's gonna happen, right? And then eventually I'm like, oh no, this is not that at all. This show is just like assholes being like assholes to each other, and like maybe one or two people you're kind of rooting for. And then finally, very late in the season, it's like okay, now that thing's gonna happen. And it is going to be an extension, a result of the tensions that are boiling throughout the show, right? So I do think that absolutely works. But I did have this feeling of like, that's just cheating. It's just cheating to be like, hey, do you want to watch 6 hours of TV to find out who dies? Like, let's tease it at the beginning. And I was researching this before we started recording, and Mike White was like, yeah, I know that's a trope. Like I did it on purpose. like he's like, I was like, how can I use that trope thematically, right? To sort of be like, to kind of create this sense of existential dread that like these characters are already dealing with before anybody has to die for it, right? And I was like, okay, that's cool. But more importantly, I do just love the show itself, the characters, the writing, obviously the locations and the way it's shot, and the music is just like so like awesome and anxiety inducing. So then it's like once I got settled with what the show was, then I was able to really enjoy it. And then now 2 seasons later, I'm like, okay, cool. The thing you tease at the beginning will happen, but I don't really care that it will happen because I'm just focusing on everything else. So yeah, really, really like it. I don't know how hooked I was 2 episodes into the first 2 seasons. I don't feel as hooked on this season right now, but I don't need to be because I already am the audience. Like I'm already like a baked in audience for this show, and I will watch every episode of every season probably as long as it exists. So like I don't need to be hooked because I just enjoy watching it quite a bit. But obviously we are seeing the same thing of just a whole bunch of pots that are bubbling over, and just which one's going to boil first. Like these, with the Walton Goggins character or Lucius Malfoy, it's like just like they're just like bombs ready to explode, right? And then you have like the three women, the three friends, who it's like I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen, right? So it's just kind of those fun different like layers of the dramatic question isn't so much is X going to Y, it's just what's going to happen. It's going to be something, right? And that is just a fun way to watch this show and just feel that dread of just being like, I'm just waiting for the next episode to see what thing is going to happen or not happen. And sometimes you want things to happen quicker, but in general it's just entertaining. It's just an entertaining ride the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously this format of like put the ending at the beginning, someone's gonna die, Agatha Christie style-ish almost, and then every scene gets that added little bit of tension and subtext of like, yeah, like in this season, the three women are on vacation, and it's like, oh yeah, there's tension, and like there's already subtext and stuff there, and then my brain is like, but one of them could die, like somebody's gonna start shooting, like right. Could it be them? So like that added stuff on top. And I'm glad you talked about the music. I'm going to come back to the music because I think the style is really distinct and is partially what sold me on the first season. But first, Trisha, what are you making of The White Lotus so far?
God, I love being set up to fail. I'll be the first to admit that, prestige TV is a struggle for me. And I'm just a bad millennial, I guess. I don't know what's wrong with my brain, why it's so out of step with the brain of every other single person in my generation. That, I don't know. There's something about TV, like the format of a TV series that is just difficult for me. And part of it is because I think the engine of television requires like open-endedness and flexibility. And even in an anthology series like this, it's like it wasn't supposed to be like a series, right? It was supposed to be like one thing. And then they've kind of made it into an anthology series. I know there are recurring characters, and so I think as like a thought experiment, it's kind of interesting. But as a narrative, it's like I'm not clear what's unifying it. Now, I haven't seen the first 2 seasons, so maybe there is more unity here in terms of like theme and ideas than I'm like privy to. So I'm going to try not to comment on that. But just to acknowledge at the outset that my brain is broken and like there's something about TV that I'm just like, ugh, I don't, ugh. Like I'll watch a movie like 40 minutes at a time over 3 nights, but it's a movie and I have complete and utter faith that it's only going to take me 3 nights. You know what I mean? It's just like there's something bounded about the narrative form of a feature film that is like a little key that's been cut to unlock my little heart. And a TV series, I'm like, it doesn't get in there. I try. That being said, I'm always happy when I'm wrong, and there have been shows that have proved me wrong. So I'm optimistic that The White Lotus is going to get in there for me. All of that to say, I had a tough time with the first episode in this season. The cold open felt like just any cold open to me. Like, even like procedural crime shows do this, you know what I mean? They're like, there's the body a week earlier. And I'm like, okay, that's everything. Everything is that now. And like while the setting and the locales are beautiful, I also was missing a POV character to really like sink my teeth into. The thing about this is that it really reminds me of 2 of my favorite movies, which are, you know, the Knives Out, Glass Onion of it all. Like I love those. But in those movies, we have like a Benoit Blanc, right? Where it's just like, okay, somebody is on the outside of this satirical world. And so we have somebody that we can kind of be with. And of course, there are secondary characters in both of those movies that we also can kind of like be in the POV and not feel like every single person is a ridiculous person that we have to laugh at and no one is likable. I don't think that's necessarily the case here, although it doesn't signal right away who our person is, right? It kind of takes its time. It's just like, who is my person? I don't know.
Belinda?
Maybe Belinda. I think Belinda is the one that is being pointed at the most. And I know she is a recurring character, or that she's back from, I think, season 1. I think I read. And I think that, yeah, the movie is kind of doing that. And we know that, right, the kid from the beginning is her son. And that when he, like, finds the body, it's really because he's concerned about her. So I think there is some of that. But the first episode was pretty tough for me because of all the, like, narrative expository work that has to be done. I know no one's gonna drop dead in this episode. It's the first episode, so really I'm just here to like, okay, I'm watching the expository work being done. Not that it wasn't compelling, but I actually reluctantly started to feel myself getting a little bit invested by the time we got to the second episode and we started to get to know everybody better.
That's how they get you.
That is how they get you. And I will say currently my favorite person is Walton Goggins' girlfriend. What's her name?
Yes, Chelsea.
I love her.
She's so great.
So anyway, that's my current front runner. She's who I'm clinging to right now.
I really like already appreciating this perspective because I was also feeling distanced in this kind of first episode, and like it was almost running on, like it was counting on me to already want to know and be invested. And like as I was watching it, I was like, I'm leaning forward because I know the formula of a White Lotus season. If I didn't, I don't know that I would have been that engaged with this one. The second episode, I agree, pulled me in more, and it was like, all right, cool, now the ride is starting to form. But I also like that you kind of call it this, like, the perspective thing and which character are you with? Because that kind of made me realize that's almost part of the experience that I've had, is like you're dropped in to this cast of characters and you're like, who are these people? I don't know how I feel about them. And then slowly I would find myself like aligning with some, like my allegiance is with, you know, this character or that character, and they become my protagonist. And I wonder if that's different for different people. If different people look like Carrie Coon is my person in this one.
Right.
Interesting. I think she's definitely one of the people that they want you to like look
Mm-hmm.
at and be with.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Trisha. Chelsea, I think, is my person too right
All
now.
day.
Yeah.
What a delight.
Well, I think the biggest difference is it's not as clear, because I'm thinking about like what kind of hooked me in the first two seasons. And in season one, it's like you've got Alexandra Daddario and she's married to this jerk, and like we clearly like don't want her to be with him, and like very early, you know. So then it just really quickly becomes a question like, oh, is she going to be able to kind of come into her own? Is she going to be able to kind of like emerge from this victorious, you know? So you have something to kind of really latch onto right away. And then season two, you've got the Albie character, the son of the three, the grandfather, father, and son, who meets Haley Lou Richardson and has kind of a crush on her. So it becomes kind of a sweet will they, won't they. He's kind of, you know, a little bit of a bumbling idiot, you know. You're like, oh, I kind of like you, and like maybe you're not perfect, but I'm rooting for you. And then even with Haley Lou Richardson, she's like dealing with her job and everything. And I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm on your side. And I feel like in this, it's like I think you guys have nailed the two characters who are the most sympathetic, but Carrie Coon is also like a little wacky, and she like she's like
Definitely
drunk.
hiding something.
Right, exactly. So it's like, I don't know what's going on with you. Chelsea is like is delightful, but also is also just kind of an over the top character. So it's a little harder to kind of just be like, oh man, like you're great and I really want great things for you, as much as like I enjoy watching you and I'm having a good time, and you know, you're maybe not in the best relationship ever, but I feel like I don't yet have what I had in the first two seasons, which was my earthling that I could be like, hello earthling, you want something that I can really relate to, and I really hope you get it, so I'm going to watch for that and enjoy everything else that's happening. So far this season, and this isn't even a complaint, it's just an observation, so far this season has been like just a lot of people who have potential issues that are going to crop up, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they happen. I'm rooting for people more than others, but I don't have my anchor character.
Yeah.
A few thoughts. So I am now remembering I tried to watch season one originally. I watched the first episode and didn't keep watching because I did not have that character that I cared about or was interested in. And thinking about, you know, the first episode of a White Lotus season doesn't really do all the things that pilots usually do. Like they don't. They always end usually with like a couple like in bed and you like zoom out of the window or something and nothing's really happening, or there's no real like twist or hook at the end of the episode. It's just kind of like, okay, now it's time for this one to be done. And it almost feels like there's this weird thing, and there's a larger conversation to be had about the streaming era that we're still in. But, you know, what started the streaming era? Netflix pioneered and disrupted the market with this whole new idea of dropping a whole season at once. And so episodes, unlike before, which had to have these certain act structures with ad breaks and hook you for the next, you know, week to come back a week later, Netflix is like, no, it can just be 1 8-hour movie with like interruptions for credits, and you can just stream it all in one night if you want to. And I feel like there's this weird thing where like other shows that are not using the Netflix model are still constructed as if they're on a drop it all in one night model. And I think White Lotus is kind of that way, where it's as you get later into the season, as you get more invested, as more drama is accelerating, then I think there's kind of built-in cliffhangers and you really feel like, oh man, I'm so excited for next week. But the first couple episodes, as it's ramping up and teaching you about the characters, they don't have that. And so there's always this rough, it's always difficult to get into a White Lotus season in this week by week format. And I think part of what was so much fun about watching season 2 was I had watched it after most of it had come out. And so I was able to just like night after night, just keep watching without these long waiting periods.
Fascinating.
And so that Netflix model actually like was working. yeah, so it's a little frustrating to watch just the pilot or the first episode of season 3. It's like, okay, like we kind of just barely got started, and now I guess I'll wait a week. But altogether, binging it might be incredibly, fun, and you don't have to have that patience.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had that thought at the end of the first episode of like, I want to watch the next episode, not because there's a cliffhanger, but because the show hasn't started yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
It really does feel like, the first act, or like the first half of the first act of like a movie structure, where it's just really laying the groundwork. And I think what's special about the White Lotus is that it cares to do that. It like takes the time to go through each character and start to signal to you what their deal is. And so I appreciate that it cares to do that. But as you're saying, then you have to wait a week for it to start moving and developing and getting somewhere. So that is a frustrating thing that the whole market disruption of bingeable TV led to not bingeable TV.
Or, yeah, TV that seems to be designed as if you can just watch it all in a row, but you can't.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
Just clarifying.
Yeah.
I do wonder about this show because it is a vacation mystery, essentially, right? And I don't know what the previous 2 seasons have been like, but another thing that I think what I was bumping up against in the first episode is that a lot of people don't have any clear goals, right? They're on vacation. And so, like, unless someone shows up there and they're like, my goal for this vacation is to get unhooked from whatever I'm addicted to or whatever, like, unless they, like, there's a stated clear goal, I think that also is kind of robbing it from the drama, right? I do think it's interesting with those 3 childhood friends where it's like they kind of have a little bit of like a stake or a pressure where it's starting to feel like they're maybe at a crisis point in their friendship. And you can feel that building. I thought it was interesting that like there is in the family plot line, I'm sorry, I'm going to look their name up. Jason Isaacs, Parker Posey, Patrick Schwarzenegger, that whole gang.
The Ratliffs.
Yeah, the Ratliffs, thank you.
Saxon and Piper and Lachlan.
Yeah.
Sorry, being someone who like knows a lot of people from North Carolina, because my in-laws are all from North Carolina and went to Chapel Hill, I was like, oh, this is very specific. The oldest son looks exactly like my brother-in-law on vacation. Anyway, Jason Isaacs' Southern accent is almost, but not.
There's definitely some times where like even
but not at all.
Both him and Parker Posey kind of like go in and out of the accents.
They really do. It's not an easy accent.
If I
to
can
nail.
tell, then definitely something is happening.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Ratliff family, it's interesting that there is a stated goal for the daughter, right? Piper is there to see a monk. She has to like have this for her term paper, blah, blah, blah. And then they call out like, oh, the younger son also has to make a decision about college, right? And it doesn't feel that high stakes to me, but it's like a stated ticking clock. So there is some work that's being done to like kind of create, these external mechanics or like something to build in some kind of narrative structure to it. But in other relationships, because the show is hiding stuff about these characters from us on purpose, then I don't know what anybody's here for or how long they're here or what happens if this thing happens or doesn't happen. And it's like, they're just going to wake up and it's going to be another beautiful day in Thailand. And what am I braced for?
Point that it's almost comical, like with the Walton Goggins like character. Also, like every time the White Lotus owner is on screen, it like cuts to him and he's just like really serious. It's like, okay, something about her and like her husband, like her husband,
right?
But you're not gonna tell me. You're gonna tell me. You're gonna tell me, but you're not gonna tell me. And like, okay,
next episode, it seems like we're going that direction,
right?
Yeah.
It's interesting though that the 2 sort of by design least likable characters, with Walton Goggins and Jason Isaacs, are the ones who have the clearest goal. We don't know why, like with Jason Isaacs gets the foul-mouthed Ki Hai Kwan phone call, which is delightful. And but it's almost like the characters who we are least aligned with are also the ones where we can point at and be like, I know what you want. So like that maybe makes it easier to at least, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of not be on board with them, but at least be kind of compelled and interested in their story because we have a clearer goal. And then it's almost like the more likable a character gets, the less clear of a goal they have, but that's okay because then we're like, oh, I like you. I hope you're happy. I hope that like bad things don't happen to you. And but again, there's just a lot of, you know, what I called sort of implied conflict. I think I talked about this once. We talked about like Queen's Gambit or something, which is just the sort of just the question marks of like something is going to happen and I don't know what it is yet, but I can feel just the anxiety that the show wants me to feel.
Yeah, I'm curious to kind of see or feel out like what I feel like every season of the White Lotus is kind of a different take on its like theme bubble, which seems to be around just like in these kind of worlds of privilege or just kind of the Western mind. What are all these kind of like pathologies or you know, these undercurrents that are bubbling beneath the surface that all come to a head in this location at this time in this place. And part of what made last season, I think, so enjoyable episode to episode, even if you didn't know all the facts about the characters, what was really going on, was that there was a lot of just relationship stuff happening. There was lots of people attracted to each other and crossing, you know, in ways that were like, you know, wrong and crossing boundaries. And it basically, it was like this constant like desire and attraction that is very in the moment and has like stakes in the moment and isn't just relying on what's their backstory, like what's their secret. And I think, you know, the things that have worked already in this season are, you know, the thing that is like really uncomfortable, where it's like Lachlan is obviously struggling with his sexuality, and then, you know, he's paired with his brother, naked in the room, and so it's like that's the stuff I think the White Lotus is so great at exploring, which is just like the unspoken, not polite thing that is like very real underneath the surface for all these characters. And maybe this season hasn't felt as like engaging moment to moment because a lot of it's relying on secrets and things from the past and not as much on the in the moment desires of the characters.
Yeah.
But like as we're saying, episode 2 is helping me to get drawn in because we have more time with like the three friends, and now we're seeing how like different pairings are kind of attacking the third in different formations, and yeah, there's things developing. But I think season 2 was just so much fun because every episode was like drenched in desire, and that is always just fun to watch in the moment, regardless of the past.
Yeah, I mean, season 2 is like sex, and why is like sex hard to deal with when we also have culture and society and like
Right.
I feel like it had a
So
kind
that's
of a clear
that's the theme of season 2, and so I'm
Right.
curious, do we have a sense yet of what the season 3 kind of central orienting idea is?
I mean, to me, it seems to be about like wellness, right? This like sort of spirituality, this pursuit of like wellness. And, you know, the pseudoscience and again, like spirituality, I don't know, kind of the sort of illusory chasing or like virtue signaling that goes with that. It's like, I'm going to put my phone away and detox from my devices. And like, but obviously, like, I was appreciating this actually a lot. I don't know what the other season like credit sequences are like, but I really like this one where it's got like the painting and it's zooming in on all the things in the painting. And then obviously the direction is also doing like, look at these monkeys. Aren't they monkeys? You see
Right.
them? They're monkeys.
Yeah.
visual
Yeah.
metaphor. Do you get it?
Right. Obviously it's thematic. It's like all the things that we do to distinguish ourselves from being monkeys. But are we really? Right. And
Right.
so those kinds of things. And again, I really like that it did seem, especially in the second episode, to be coalescing around sort of like, okay, we're going to do some cleansing. We're going to do the like massages, the things that we do to be pure, right? And to pursue wellness. And obviously satirizing, you know, kind of the, I don't know, the silliness of that, given like the primal nature of what we are.
I like that it is satirizing it, but also like I feel like is generous to it at the same time. Like I think that's one of the things I like about the show in general is they can poke fun at these like stupid things that we do and these like terrible behaviors, but also has like empathy and understands why we do it. And it's just a little thing that I like about this show is that it's not just trying to make everyone feel bad for these things, but it's more like shining a light on it and like look at it really from all the different angles and laugh about it a little bit.
And you can tell Mike White is a seeker, and like has looked for these answers himself and is making fun of himself, but also earnestly is seeking these things for himself. So that's what is so lovely about the White Lotus is that it is both satirical, but it's not nihilistic. It has a really like open heart to a lot of these things.
Yeah, you kind of never know season to season, episode to episode, which version of that you're going to get. Are we going to get this slightly more optimistic one? Are we going to get the slightly more nihilistic one? Right. But yeah, there has been, and Trisha, I'm sure you can gather this just from the design of the show, but there has been just general kind of a class theme and everything over all the seasons of just these are rich people in a space with people who are hired to help them, right? They are there to relax, but they are go-getters, so there's just sort of like there's conflict, there's like internal conflict built in to just the premise of the show, essentially, even though the premise is just like, what if rich people went on vacation? It's like already you can just kind of see how that there's like this like social warfare happening between these two characters in the first season that's just like running the entire way through and just gets worse and worse as it goes. And then it's like here we're seeing it with again like Jason Isaacs and Walton Goggins. It's like, what if they could just relax and like deal with their problems and just be themselves for a little while? It's like, no, they have to be completely focused on this external thing that is whatever thing that they are after for whatever reason is more important than like having a conversation or getting a massage or just like doing something that might make you feel pleased for 10 minutes or something, right? And then obviously I think what's brilliant about the design of the three friends is that sort of like even in our own circle we're trying to make sure we're not at the bottom, right? So it's
Right.
like you've got the two women talking about Carrie Coon, and then it's like, okay, like they think they are the special ones, and she is the one that the one who tags along, right? But then as soon as two of the others are, then they're talking about their famous friend, like, oh man, what her attitude and da da da, right? And it's like one, as I think you were just saying, Alex, it is very well observed, and it's like, oh, we do those things, right? That does happen, but also I think it is, and again, this is maybe more of a theme of the show than a theme of the season, but just that sort of everyone is trying to make sure that they are at the top of their game or at the top of whatever circle they happen to be in, even if that circle is literally three friends and the other one's in the other room, so we get to talk about her and pretend like we are the superior ones.
Monkeys.
Yep.
This is monkeys.
Well, exactly. And that's yeah.
Yeah.
I love that scene also. This kind of goes into just like the style of the show, but the scene toward the beginning of episode 2 where Michelle Monaghan and what's the other woman's name? Who's
Leslie Bibb?
It's
Leslie
Jacqueline.
Bibb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Leslie Bibb.
Yeah.
Kate, right?
Kate.
Yeah. So they're talking and it's like getting like hushed and then like they're talking about the Carrie Coon character and then Carrie Coon pounds on and it's a jump scare and it's like this show like knows what it's about and decides to use its style and directing to like direct this as like a horror movie moment, like because that's what it is to these characters and it plays it like that.
There's a lot of social horror in the White Lotus. Just like this is so uncomfortable and so awful. I can't believe this is happening.
Well, and that's, we mentioned the music at the beginning, Brian, you brought it up, and that was one of the things that hooked me in the first season is because it's basically Punch Drunk Love music, especially that first season, and it's doing that same thing that Punch Drunk Love does that we talked about in our podcast of like the music is creating anxiety for you, the viewer. And so like in that movie, it's Adam Sandler walking from one side of a warehouse to another, but you're like, is he gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? Oh my god, because of the way the music is doing it. And White Lotus definitely does that and uses its style to kind of put you in that psychology of its characters.
Forget if I talked about this. Maybe I did when we talked about The Shining. But a friend of mine got married and shared the video of her like wedding day, and it started with like drone shots over top of the estate where they got married and stuff. And I just for some reason thought of the opening of The Shining, so that I just took it. All I did was I muted it and I put on the wah, 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 and it was insane that it was just like her like mom helping her do her hair just felt like, oh, they're both gonna die. Like it was just like it just made suddenly everything feel so tense and awful, and it was so good. Fascinating. Yeah.
At some point, we need to release the Brian supercut of just all the putting the Moby song from the end of the Bourne films at the end of other movies.
Yeah, because it works every time, and it's amazing.
I've been trolling our Slack with.
Yes.
One thing I want to call out that every season has done is also have a story about the locals, the people who actually live here. They're not tourists. They're the staff. They live and work here, and those are always. Yeah, I love that every season that's kind of a mandatory part of the fabric of the show is like it's not just about the rich people who are here. There's always a character story about people who actually live in the place. And I really love the guy. What's his name? How do you say it? Guy Talk. Yeah.
Yeah, just he is the closest to what I was saying of just that sort of will they, won't they, like sweet person character. It took second episode to kind of make him be that, But sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, it's such great casting with him because you see his face and you're like, oh, I want you to be okay.
Yeah.
He's such a sweet, like, genuine, like, pure human being, and I just want you to be okay. But I know this show is not going to be like kind to you probably, and I hope you make it. But I also, that's part of what I'm kind of thinking about with Mike White is like he has these characters that really are pure, and they're not all so I don't know, just like what's the word, corrupted. The way so many of the tourists are. There is this purity that also exists in the world, and that is good. And I love that the show also has that. So it's not always just kind of that dark satire where everybody's awful uniformly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I want to kind of hear like expectations, predictions, what you guys are keeping your eyes on. We don't do lessons, but I feel like a cool lesson has emerged in this conversation for me, which is all the kind of talk about like the characters and which are the characters that you pay attention to or invest in or identify with. And in retrospect, it's like a no duh that the White Lotus is a great thing to study, but I think it is just cool. Like we've called out, there's the sweet people like Guy Talk, we're just like, this person is sweet and good and I want the goodness to happen. You can have clearly kind of bad coded, for lack of a more sophisticated word, characters like the Walter Goggins person, but if they have a goal, you're invested in like, okay, they're really trying to do something. So what's that? So you're kind of paying attention there. And then we have kind of the Piper character that's like the daughter who can like see the reality, like see through the artifice. Like so much of like her family and her father are kind of swept up in this like, the corrupted culture and the lie. And she's kind of is able to see it in a similar way that I think we're supposed to see it. And all those different things are kind of ways of binding us to the characters in different ways.
Yeah, she's another Earthling.
Right.
Yes. But also, she definitely is hiding something, right? Like,
right. There's something going on
with that character. And what she's doing is so, like, kind of an extreme response to like her upbringing and her own world and whatever. Like she's like, I'm gonna go write my thesis on this Buddhist monk and I'm going to Thailand and I'm gonna go do this like a pilgrimage essentially to talk to this person, but then she's too scared to go into the temple, right? Like there's a lot that I know or I sense is going to come out of that character that is probably going to drive a lot of drama in the family. Like definitely is hiding something. Definitely there's like a story we're going to hear from the past. and also the actions that she takes. She feels like she sees the truth, but she also feels capable of doing something extreme. Because what she's already doing is kind of extreme within the world that she comes from. And so I've been watching her very closely. I like her. But I'm curious to see what it is that she does, because I feel like it's gonna be decisive.
I think she knows her real parents are Kaylee Spaney and Brie Larson. That's going to come out of something.
Definitely.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, and that's a thing that I'm sensing a little bit. I feel like season 1 characters, like season 1 feels kind of similar in its character setup as season 3, with like there's the family with the different kids and relationships to technology and stuff. But it does feel like there's a twist. Like it's not the same. Everybody's a little bit different, has their own kind of thing going on. And like Brian was saying, that Alexandra, the Dario character in the first season is kind of that earthling truth seer that can really see things. So it would be kind of a repeat character if it was just simply that with the Piper character. So maybe there's something more going on.
Still water runs deep.
Yeah. Mm.
And the culture and the place this family is from is very different from the family in the first season. And I think there's different kinds of, psychological things that can develop from the specificities of this family. So yeah, it could get really interesting.
And I'm watching Parker Posey also.
Right.
Because like it's Parker Posey. Like
yeah.
They're not gonna let her just like be silly this entire time and like, pass out and snore and stuff like that. She has like so much range, and she's so entertaining, and she also has like just, they're gonna give her something really meaty. And the fact that weird scene where the Kate comes up and is like, "Hi, I know you," and she's like, "I don't know," like just the coldest,
like,
weirdest.
Did something happen at that baby shower
of all time? Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what on spirals or unspirals from this family.
Yeah. All right, so we're keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm glad that I don't know what might happen. I think partially because the show is keeping so much from us. That I think that it's like you have a character like, Jason Isaac's character, who I can sort of be like, okay, I have like a rough sense of where your plot line might go. You're going to try to avoid this scheme, and you're going to be more and more out of control, and you're going to lash out and everything. We have like the incest brothers, where I'm like, I don't know what might happen there, or like whatever, right? But then it's like with the three friends, I'm like, I have no idea where that's going to go, right? But I know it's going to go somewhere. And I think like that's the most exciting thing to me is just like not knowing what these ticking time bombs are going to actually turn into, rather than just feeling like, okay, I know what's going to happen here. I just have to wait 6 more episodes for it to happen, right? And my only other thing though is each of these seasons has been 1 episode longer than the previous season. So I'm just hoping that the things that happen will happen at some point, and not, we got a bank robbery, like, and clearly like the bank robbery, jewel heist, like the show is usually good about doing things along the way. But the things that we are really waiting to see when they happen, I would like them to happen along the way, with all these characters kind of exploding, than just sort of have everything be building towards like one big explosive finale.
Well, and this is what concerns me about television and this show. But the thing is, I would hate for a series of TV to be less efficient on purpose than it could be, right?
Don't watch The Bear.
Andor season 2 is coming too, if we want to.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just like, I think, especially with this show, you have beautiful locales, you have a lot of characters, and the temptation could be let's just put combinations of these characters into beautiful locales and have them act at each other for a while holding back all of the major like plot beats and developmental work. And like sprinkling in some revelations about their backstory. That could be a temptation for a show like this. I don't know anything about this show. So maybe it's actually quite an efficient show overall, and lots of stuff happens, and there are lots of twists and turns. But I'm not convinced of that yet. So because mostly what has been happening so far is different groups of scenes of people talking to each other and sort of revealing stuff about who they are, but not in the moment doing things mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's for me the big question for season 3 is because I think the first 2 seasons did do a good job of that, like where a lot does happen, or I feel satisfied at the end of almost every episode, I would say, especially season 2.
Season 2 felt like it was very dense, like a lot occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that they added an episode feels like they wouldn't do that if they didn't need to, but
Well, the last
I could be
episode's
wrong.
April 6th, which means you have to pay for one more month of Max in order to get squeeze in that last episode. Guys, look, if our track record with what we're watching is any indication, we'll be fine. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
100%.
We single-handedly ruined White Lotus. Is the
Yeah.
conversation.
We have
You're welcome,
the
everybody.
kiss of death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. Excited for I am excited for season 3 of White Lotus and episode 3. It sounds like maybe we're gonna go to a different place. Also,
We
It's
might.
sort of what like there's talk of going to Bangkok, and that's something that rarely happens. Of like, oh, we're changing locations. I'm curious to see how they handle all of this. So, looking forward to the next episode. I want to say a big thank you, as always, to the patrons that make this show possible. Thank you to our producer, Vince Major, Michael Tucker, and been joined today by Trisha Rand, Brian Bittner, and Alex Calleros. And we will see you in the next episode for our discussion of White Lotus Season 3, Episode 3, called Meaning of Dreams.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.